The timestamp on my contract showed 3:47 a.m., but I'd never worked past midnight on the Morrison estate. I'm Dean Greenfield, 42, civil rights partner at our trusts and estates firm here in Des Moines. 20 years of practice taught me to trust documentation above memory. But this felt different. The Morrison family trust documents sat on my desk Tuesday morning, freshly printed from our case management system. Standard boilerplate language filled most pages. Then I reached section 12. The beneficiary designation language wasn't mine. I'd drafted hundreds of trust agreements. My writing style was methodical, conservative. These paragraphs flowed differently. More aggressive phrasing. Unusual clause structures I'd never use. But my digital signature appeared at the bottom. I pulled up the original file on our network. The document property showed my user ID as the last editor. Creation date matched my calendar entry. Everything looked legitimate in the system logs, except I remembered writing different language entirely. The Morrison Trust was worth $12 million. Mrs. Morrison had specifically requested conservative investment language. She'd emphasized protecting principal over growth. I drafted accordingly. This version authorized high-risk derivatives trading. I checked my email archives for the original draft I'd sent to Mrs. Morrison. The message was gone. Not in sent items, not in deleted folders. Completely erased. My hands felt cold as I scrolled through recent case files. The Patterson will showed similar inconsistencies. Language I wouldn't write. Clauses that contradicted client instructions. All bearing my electronic signature. Someone had accessed my files. Modified my work. Made it look like my drafting. But who had that level of system access? I walked to Griffin Thornton's office. As our knowledge manager, he controlled document templates and system permissions. His door was closed. His assistant said he'd called in sick. That afternoon, I ran a security audit on my user account. The logs showed normal activity patterns. Login times matched my schedule. No suspicious access attempts. But buried in the metadata, I found something troubling. Document modification timestamps didn't align with my calendar. Files were being edited during court appearances. During client meetings. During times when I was provably elsewhere. Someone was using my credentials to alter legal documents. The implications hit me like ice water. Malpractice claims. Bar complaints. Criminal liability for document fraud. I needed to understand the scope immediately. I stayed late that evening, pulling every major file from the past 6 months. The pattern emerged slowly. Subtle changes to investment clauses. Modified beneficiary language. Altered fee structures. All designed to look like my work. All potentially exposing clients to significant financial risk. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or everyone will know what you've been doing. The threat should have scared me. Instead, it clarified everything. I'm Dean Greenfield, 42 years old, a civil rights partner at our trusts and estates firm in Des Moines. 20 years of practice had taught me to trust evidence over emotion. The anonymous text told me I was getting close to something someone desperately wanted hidden. I'd built my reputation on meticulous document review. Clients trusted me with generational wealth transfers. Estate planning required absolute precision. One misplaced comma could cost families millions. That's why the Morrison Trust modifications felt like a personal attack. I arrived at the office at 5:30 the next morning. The building was empty except for security. Perfect conditions for investigation. Griffin Thornton had joined our firm 18 months ago. Harvard Law graduate. Technology specialist. He'd modernized our document management system and streamlined our template library. Partners praised his efficiency. We reviewed each other's client conflicts religiously. Griffin had access to every file, every template, every client communication. His hiring had coincided with subtle changes in our practice. Faster document turnaround. Automated compliance checks. Enhanced security protocols. Or so we'd believed. I pulled Griffin's personnel file from HR. His references checked out. Previous employers spoke highly of his technical skills. No disciplinary history. Clean bar record. but something nagged at me about his departure from his last firm. I called my contact at the Iowa Bar Association. Professional courtesy inquiries happened regularly. Nothing unusual about checking a colleague's background. Griffin Thornton? The voice paused. Interesting you should ask. We had some informal inquiries about him last year. Nothing official, just questions about document authentication procedures. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Hypothetical scenarios about electronic signature verification, digital document integrity. The caller claimed to be researching best practices. I thanked him and hung up. Griffin had been researching document fraud techniques before joining our firm. The next step required careful planning. I needed to access Griffin's computer without triggering security alerts. Our IT department monitored all system activity. Any unusual access patterns would generate reports. But I had legitimate reasons to review knowledge management files. As a partner, I could request template updates and system modifications. I submitted a formal request for estate planning template revisions. Standard procedure required Griffin to provide current versions for review. This would give me access to his file directories. While waiting for his response, I examined the modified documents more carefully. The changes weren't random, they followed specific patterns. Investment language consistently favored high-risk strategies. Fee structures systematically increased management costs. Someone was steering client assets toward particular investment vehicles. I cross-referenced the modified investment clauses with our approved vendor list. 3 investment firms appeared repeatedly in the altered documents, all relatively new to our referral network. All recommended by Griffin during recent partner meetings. The pattern was becoming clear. Griffin wasn't just modifying documents randomly. He was directing client assets toward specific investment partners, probably earning referral fees or kickbacks. But the scope remained unclear. How many clients were affected? How much money was involved? I spent the weekend reviewing every major estate plan from the past 18 months. The modifications were subtle but consistent. Conservative investment language replaced with aggressive strategies. Traditional trust structures altered to favor active management. The financial impact was staggering. Clients were paying millions in unnecessary fees. Their assets were exposed to risks they'd explicitly rejected. Monday morning brought Griffin's response to my template request. He'd provided the current versions as requested. But when I compared them to my archived copies, I found additional discrepancies. Griffin was still making changes, even after my investigation had begun. I needed concrete proof of his access to my files. The security logs showed normal activity, but I suspected he'd found ways to mask his digital footprint. I set a trap. I created a dummy estate plan for a fictional client, included specific language that would be tempting to modify. Saved it in my personal directory with restricted access permissions. Then I waited. 2 days later, the document had been altered. Conservative investment language replaced with aggressive trading authorization. My electronic signature applied to the changes. But I'd never opened the file after creating it. Griffin had accessed my restricted directory, modified my work, applied my signature without authorization. I had him. The evidence was overwhelming: document fraud, unauthorized access to client files, systematic modification of legal instruments, potential theft of client assets through fraudulent fee structures. But I needed to understand the full scope before taking action. How many other attorneys were affected? How long had this been happening? I discreetly approached Beatrice Thornton, our senior paralegal. She'd worked at the firm for 15 years. If anyone would notice systematic changes in document procedures, it would be her. Have you noticed anything unusual about our estate planning documents lately? I asked during a coffee break. Her expression shifted. Actually, yes. Several clients have called with questions about investment language they don't remember approving. I assumed it was normal confusion about complex legal terms. Which clients? She provided a list of 8 names. All major estates, all handled within the past year. All modified by Griffin. The scope was massive, dozens of clients affected, millions of dollars in assets redirected through fraudulent document modifications. I had enough evidence for criminal charges, but I needed to move carefully. Griffin still had access to our systems. If he suspected investigation, he could destroy evidence or modify additional files. I scheduled a meeting with our managing partner for the following morning. Time to bring in firm leadership and law enforcement. But that evening I received another anonymous text. Final warning: back off or face the consequences. This time the message included a photo. My car in the office parking garage, taken from close range. Griffin knew I was investigating, and he was escalating his threats. The managing partner's office felt smaller than usual. I sat across from Beatrice Caldwell, our firm's senior partner, with printed evidence spread across her mahogany desk. Griffin's unauthorized access logs, modified client documents, the threatening messages. "This is serious, Dean." She studied the documents with practiced precision. "We need to involve law enforcement immediately." Within 2 hours, Detective Morrison from the Des Moines Police Department's white-collar crime unit arrived. He reviewed the evidence methodically, asking pointed questions about our document management systems and security protocols. "We'll need to preserve all electronic evidence," he said. "Can you restrict Griffin's access without alerting him?" Beatrice nodded. "Our IT consultant can disable his credentials remotely." But when we checked Griffin's office, his desk was cleared. His computer was gone. Security footage showed him leaving the building at 11:47 p.m. the previous night, carrying multiple boxes. He'd fled. Detective Morrison issued a BOLO alert. Meanwhile, I faced the devastating task of contacting affected clients. 8 families discovered their estate documents had been fraudulently modified. Trust language altered to redirect assets. Investment authorizations they'd never approved. The Hendricks family was particularly affected. Their $3.2 million trust had been modified to include aggressive trading provisions that generated excessive fees. Mrs. Hendricks was furious. "How could this happen? We trusted your firm with our life savings." I had no adequate answer. The firm faced potential malpractice claims exceeding $10 million. 3 days later, the Professional Licensing Review Board opened an investigation. Professional conduct analyst Greg Sanders contacted me directly. "We're examining potential violations of professional conduct rules," he explained during our phone call. "The board takes document fraud very seriously, especially when client assets are involved." The investigation expanded rapidly. Sanders discovered Griffin had accessed files belonging to 4 other attorneys in our firm. Similar modifications, similar unauthorized signatures. The fraud spanned 18 months and affected 23 clients. Our malpractice insurance carrier launched their own investigation. Client lawsuits began filing within the week. The firm's reputation was crumbling. But the worst revelation came during Sanders' forensic examination of our case management system. Griffin hadn't just modified documents. He'd been skimming client retainer funds through fraudulent billing entries. Small amounts from multiple accounts. Nearly $180,000 stolen over 2 years. The evidence was overwhelming: document fraud, theft, unauthorized practice. Multiple felony charges awaited Griffin when police located him. Meanwhile, I worked 18-hour days helping affected clients, reviewing their files, identifying unauthorized changes, coordinating with law enforcement and the licensing board. Beatrice Thornton proved invaluable during this crisis. She'd maintained detailed records of client communications and document revisions. Her meticulous documentation helped establish the timeline of Griffin's fraudulent activities. "I always suspected something was wrong," she told me during one late evening session. "Documents would appear in client files that I didn't remember processing. But Griffin always had explanations." The firm implemented emergency security measures, new document authentication protocols, enhanced access controls, regular audit procedures. But the damage was extensive. 2 weeks after Griffin's disappearance, Detective Morrison called with news. We found him in Phoenix. He's fighting extradition, but we'll have him back in Iowa within the month. The arrest made local news. Des Moines attorney charged with document fraud. Our firm's name appeared in every story. Potential clients canceled consultations. Existing clients demanded file reviews. But something unexpected happened during this crisis. Other attorneys began reaching out. Lawyers who'd experienced similar betrayals. Colleagues who needed guidance navigating professional misconduct investigations. I found myself helping them understand the licensing board process, explaining how to preserve evidence, coordinating with law enforcement. My experience with Griffin's fraud became valuable expertise for others facing similar situations. The Professional Licensing Review Board concluded their investigation 6 weeks later. Greg Sanders presented comprehensive findings to the disciplinary committee. Griffin faced permanent disbarment. Criminal charges included multiple felonies. Restitution orders exceeded $200,000. Our firm survived, but barely. 3 partners left to start independent practices. Client trust required years to rebuild. Malpractice settlements consumed most of our reserves. Yet through this devastation, I discovered something important. My analytical skills and investigative experience were uniquely suited to helping attorneys facing professional misconduct allegations. The legal community needed advocates who understood both the technical aspects of document fraud and the emotional trauma of professional betrayal. Griffin was eventually convicted on all charges, sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, ordered to pay full restitution to affected clients. His legal career was permanently destroyed, but the real victory came from helping other attorneys navigate similar crises. Lawyers who'd been betrayed by partners, attorneys facing false accusations, colleagues struggling with licensing board investigations. Justice had been served, but the work was just beginning. 12 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking the Raccoon River. The nameplate on my desk read, Dean Greenfield, attorney at law. No partners, no associates, no knowledge managers with access to my files. I run a solo firm defending lawyers accused of billing misconduct. The irony wasn't lost on me. Griffin's betrayal had destroyed my trust in large firm structures, but it had also revealed my true calling. Every week brought new cases. Attorneys facing licensing board investigations. Partners accused of financial improprieties. Associates caught in ethical dilemmas they didn't create. My experience with document fraud made me uniquely qualified for this work. I understood the technology, the paper trails, the psychological impact of professional betrayal. Most importantly, I knew how licensing boards operated and what evidence they required. The old firm had finally stabilized. Beatrice Thornton was promoted to managing partner. She'd implemented new security protocols and oversight systems. Client trust was slowly returning. The partnership had learned expensive lessons about internal controls. Griffin served 18 months before being released on parole. His law license remained permanently revoked. Last I heard, he was working at a title company in Cedar Rapids. The legal profession had moved on without him. My phone buzzed with a text from a potential client. Another attorney facing misconduct allegations. Another professional crisis requiring careful navigation. Another opportunity to use my hard-earned expertise for good. I'd helped 17 lawyers successfully defend against licensing board complaints this year. 3 had been completely exonerated. 14 received minor sanctions instead of suspension. All had kept their careers intact. The work was demanding but rewarding. Each case reminded me why professional integrity mattered, why trust was the foundation of legal practice, why betrayal cut so deep in our profession. Outside my window, the river flowed steadily toward the Des Moines River confluence. The current was constant but peaceful. No hidden dangers, no unexpected obstacles. Just clear water moving in the right direction. My calendar showed 3 client meetings tomorrow, 2 licensing board hearings next week, a continuing education seminar on professional responsibility next month. The schedule was full but manageable. The trauma of Griffin's betrayal had faded into useful experience. The anger had transformed into advocacy. The violation of trust had become a mission to protect other attorneys from similar harm. I closed my laptop and gathered my files. The office was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. No suspicious sounds. No unexpected visitors. No mysterious access to my systems. For the first time in years, I felt completely secure in my professional environment. The paranoia was gone. The hypervigilance had relaxed. The constant checking of security logs was no longer necessary. My work defending other attorneys had given me purpose beyond personal recovery. Each successful case felt like a small victory against the kind of betrayal Griffin had committed. Each client who kept their license was proof that the system could work when properly defended. The sun was setting over Des Moines as I locked my office door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight I could rest, knowing that justice had been served and my career had found its true direction. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.